The moment the headline dropped, the world froze. Phones vibrated nonstop. Timelines refreshed like a heartbeat racing toward disaster. 3 names collided in one sentence, and suddenly nothing made sense anymore. Yang Mei Mei, Lu Dandong, Yulong. What was supposed to be a quiet love story had turned into a storm that swallowed the entire K-drama universe. Fans across the United States, Asia, Europe, Spain, and the UK stared at their screens in disbelief, asking the same question over and over again. How did it end like this? For years, Yang Mei Mei and Lu Dandong were the image of stability. They smiled perfectly on red carpets, spoke softly in interviews, and held hands just long enough for cameras to capture proof that love could survive fame. But what the world applauded was not what they lived. Behind closed doors, the marriage was unraveling thread by thread. Conversations became polite instead of passionate. Nights passed with backs turned, not out of anger, but exhaustion. Yang Mei Mei wasn't screaming for attention. She was disappearing quietly. Lu Dandong was always busy, always chasing the next project, the next milestone. Success followed him everywhere except home. Yang Mei Mei learned to eat alone, sleep alone, and cry silently so no one would notice how lonely she had become inside a marriage that looked perfect to everyone else. The saddest part wasn't the distance. It was realizing that her absence no longer disturbed him. Then Yulong entered her life, not like a thunderbolt, but like a shadow that slowly took shape. He didn't arrive with promises or temptation. He arrived with listening. He noticed the pauses in her voice, the forced smiles, the way she avoided talking about home. He didn't push. He didn't flirt. He simply stayed. And in that stillness, something dangerous began to grow. What happened between Yang Mei Mei and Yulong wasn't sudden. It was slow, suffocating, and terrifying. Late conversations stretched longer than they should have. Shared laughter felt lighter than anything she had known in years. For the first time in a long while, Yang Mei Mei felt seen. That was when guilt began to eat her alive, because she realized the most painful truth of all. She had given Yulong the part of her heart that her husband no longer touched. There was no affair, no scandalous betrayal caught by cameras, but emotional boundaries collapsed in silence. And once that line is crossed, there is no clean way back. Yang Mei Mei tried to fix her marriage. She tried harder than anyone knew. But effort cannot resurrect something already dead. One night, carrying the weight of months of suppressed truth, she finally confronted Lu Dandong. There were no raised voices, only devastating honesty. She admitted she felt empty. He admitted he felt absent. And in that quiet exchange, they both understood that love without connection is just a memory pretending to live. The divorce happened without spectacle. No public war. No accusations. Just papers signed and a chapter closed with shaking hands. But silence became fuel for rumors. Fans searched for someone to blame, and Yulong's name surfaced like a curse. When news broke that Yang Mei Mei had married Yulong not long after the divorce, outrage exploded. The internet didn't just react, it judged. She was called heartless. He was labeled a homewrecker. The timeline was dissected frame by frame, as if pain followed a schedule. Yulong became the villain of a story he never intended to be part of. Few knew that he tried to walk away more than once. Few knew that Yang Mei Mei, already broken by years of emotional neglect, refused to return to a life that drained her soul, loved and steal her away. Loneliness pushed her out. For months, Lu Dandong remained silent, and that silence was louder than any statement. When he finally spoke, his words cut through the noise with brutal clarity. There was no betrayal, he said. There was neglect. There was regret. That confession shattered many assumptions, but by then, the damage had already been done. Yang Mei Mei didn't emerge glowing from her new marriage. She emerged calmer, quieter, carrying scars the public would never fully understand. This wasn't a fairy tale romance born from passion. It was a bond formed in ruins. Yulong didn't save her. He stood beside her while she picked herself up from pieces no one else noticed falling. This story unsettled fans because it refused to offer a clean villain or a perfect hero. It forced an uncomfortable question into the spotlight. Should someone stay loyal to a marriage that slowly destroys them, or choose survival and face the world's judgment? Yang Mei Mei made her choice, and the price was public condemnation. And yet, what the world knows is only the surface. There are conversations that were never heard, nights that were never explained, and sacrifices that remain buried beneath silence. Because the darkest part of the story isn't the divorce or the wedding. It's what happened in between. And that chapter has yet to be revealed. The truth everyone thought they understood was never the real story. When Yang Mei Mei's name became permanently tied to divorce, scandal, and a sudden new marriage, the world rushed to judge before it ever stopped to listen. Headlines screamed betrayal, timelines accused deception, and fans across the United States, Asia, Europe, Spain, and the UK picked sides without knowing what was really bleeding beneath the surface. But what if the real tragedy didn't begin with a wedding or end with a divorce? What if it started much earlier, in silence? Yang Mei Mei didn't wake up one morning and decide to destroy her marriage. She woke up slowly, realizing she was disappearing inside it. Lu Dan-dong was there, yet never truly present. Success wrapped itself around him tightly, pulling him further away from home while applause replaced intimacy. Days went by without real conversations. Nights passed without warmth. Yang Mei Mei learned to survive quietly, smiling for cameras while her heart screamed in private. The loneliness wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was normal. When Yu Long entered her life, he didn't arrive as temptation. He arrived as relief. He noticed the sadness she tried to hide and listened without trying to fix her. He stayed when she spoke about exhaustion, about feeling unseen, about the fear that she had given everything to a marriage that no longer noticed her existence. Their connection didn't ignite in flames. It grew slowly, dangerously, in moments of emotional honesty that neither planned but neither could stop. That was when guilt began to suffocate her. Because the most terrifying realization wasn't that she cared for Yu Long. It was that she no longer felt anything at home. Emotional lines blurred, not through touch, but through understanding. And once the heart finds refuge elsewhere, returning feels impossible. Yang Mei Mei tried to save her marriage. She tried harder than anyone would ever know. But love alone cannot heal neglect, and effort cannot revive what is already withered. The confrontation with Lu Dan-dong was quiet and devastating. No shouting, no accusations, just truth stripped bare. She admitted she felt empty. He admitted he had been absent. In that moment, they both understood that staying together would mean slowly destroying each other. The divorce followed without drama, but silence created its own violence. Fans demanded answers. Rumors multiplied. And before the wounds could close, the news broke that shattered everything. Yang Mei Mei had married Yu Long. The internet erupted. Timelines exploded with anger and disbelief. She was called heartless. Yu Long was labeled a villain. No one wanted to hear that the marriage had ended long before the wedding ever happened. No one wanted to believe that love could grow from emotional ruins instead of desire. Yu Long became the face of betrayal in a story that never belonged to him. Few knew he had tried to walk away. Few knew Yang Mei Mei had already lost herself once and refused to do it again. Lu Dan-dong's silence only deepened the chaos until he finally spoke. There was no betrayal, he said. There was distance. There was regret. Those words cracked the narrative, but they came too late to stop the storm. By then, Yang Mei Mei had already paid the price for choosing herself. Her new marriage wasn't glamorous. It was quiet. She didn't glow with fairy tale happiness. She looked calmer, steadier, as if she had finally found ground after years of drowning. Yu Long didn't rescue her. He stood beside her while she learned how to breathe again. Their love wasn't born from excitement. It was born from survival. This story refuses to be comfortable because it forces an uncomfortable question. Is staying loyal to a broken marriage more honorable than choosing emotional survival? Yang Mei Mei answered that question, and the world punished her for it. But what the public still doesn't know is what happened in the darkest moments between the goodbye and the new beginning. The conversations, the sacrifices, the nights she almost walked away from everything, including Yu Long. And that truth is still hidden. If stories like this keep you awake at night, If you crave the raw emotions, the untold secrets, and the real stories behind the headlines, then you're exactly where you belong. Subscribe to K-Drama Spark and stay close, because the story isn't over. The next chapter goes deeper, darker, and far more shocking than anyone expects. And you won't want to miss what comes next. Blackheart Fire.